Moving countries can be one of the most exciting and most challenging things you'll ever do. And we're here to take one big worry off your plate: your taxes. At Expat Taxes, we understand the complexities of Irish tax from your perspective as an expat and tailor our advice to your needs. With decades of expertise, our team at Expat Taxes will help you navigate tax residency, cross-border taxation, reliefs and returns, and will work with your country's tax advisor to make sure your taxes are sorted. Whether you're an individual or a corporation coming from Australia, the United States, the UK, or anywhere in the world, we want to help you. So visit us at expattaxes.ie to book a consultation today, and let's make moving to Ireland easier together.
Welcome to Tax Bites for Expats, the top tax tips you want to know as an expat. The podcast is here to help answer the common queries and concerns expats have when moving to or from Ireland. Complex taxes explained simply. We'll focus on the Irish and international tax issues to be aware of to ensure you save time, money, and stress.
Hi everyone, podcast producer Matt here, stepping in for Steph, who is still busy as we get closer to the new year. This episode is a part 1 with John Healy of Healy's Insurances. Healy's is known in the expat community as the place to get insurance, usually for cars. Mary Doyle is the name most of you would know, but John has been working in insurance for decades. In this part 1, we hear a bit about John's background, what the insurance landscape is like in Ireland, and the 3 main things you need to get your car insurance when you land as an expat. Make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss part 2, and check the show notes for his details. Enjoy!
Welcome to this episode of Tax Bites for Expats. Today we're going to talk about all things related to insurance and getting insurance when you are moving to Ireland. We're joined by John Healy, who is an Irish insurance professional with over 25 years experience. And any of you who might hang out in some of the more popular expat online forums are likely familiar with Healy Insurance, who are based in Kerry and notorious for their ability to help expats with the various insurance issues they can encounter. John is the managing director there, and he joins us today to chat about all the issues our listeners need to be aware of when navigating the labyrinth that is the Irish insurance industry. The plan is to focus mainly on car and home insurance. And with no further ado, John, it is a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we've got lots to talk about. But before we kick off, I'm sure anyone listening would appreciate a run through as to your background, how you got into insurance, and a little bit about the services that you and your very well-known team offer.
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, I'm 25 years in the industry this year. That came as a surprise to myself when I realised it earlier on in the year, to be honest. Time does fly. Healy Insurances, so I'm a second-generation insurance broker. My father started the business in 1981. I came in 2002. Back then we had a team of 2, plus my father and myself, and today we have 12 people around the place answering phones and answering emails and providing service. In terms of what we offer, we're a general insurance broker, so it's motor insurance. That would include car and van and commercial vehicles. We do home insurance, all kinds of home insurance, and commercial insurance, which would include liability and pubs, restaurants, hotels, things like that. So it's a general broker across. Motor would be one of our big ones, obviously.
And what, I don't know a huge amount, I must admit, about the insurance industry in Ireland. I'd imagine some of our listeners, if not all, would probably know very little about it, particularly if they've never lived in Ireland before. How would you kind of give a run through of how the industry works here to anyone who knows very little?
Yeah, fair enough. So to break it down simply, you need the minimum legal requirement in Ireland is third-party motor insurance. So you need to be insured to be on the road. These days, third party is kind of a thing of the past, really. That means that if you crash into somebody else and it's your fault, the damage to the other vehicle or person is covered by the insurance policy. So these days, mostly it's comprehensive cover, which would cover your own vehicle as well as the person you hit. And another option would be third party fire and theft. Comprehensive cover tends to be the one that is the market norm. So one would need to have an insurance policy to be on the road, and to do. If you don't have it, you're not insured, but you can also be prosecuted by the Gardaí.
Okay. Yeah. So it's pretty important to have your ducks in a row.
Very, yeah. And just to point out on that stuff, actually, that if you don't have an insurance policy and you are prosecuted, you are then cutting off the market for when you get back on the road, because you're considered non-standard. So not alone are you getting penalty points and a day in court, you're also getting high insurance for a number of years thereafter.
Okay. System penalise people who don't comply, which makes sense, I suppose, when you have to assume that if someone does crash into you, that you've got cover.
Yes.
That's interesting, and I'm sure it doesn't necessarily work like that everywhere.
Yes, correct. In certain parts of the world, it comes with the car. In some other jurisdictions, it comes with the motor tax. It might be included in that. So it's a different model in Ireland. It's private sector, but you need to have insurance to be on a public roadway. That's the way it is with the last number of years.
And in terms of, because I would recall even there has been kind of consolidation in the industry, or different entries and exits in terms of players. What are we seeing in terms of kind of competitiveness in the industry?
Yes,
in recent times.
So I'll go back a little bit further, if you don't mind, just to give a bit of background to it. So about 10 years ago, it doesn't feel like 10, but there you go, we had a number of insurance company failures in Ireland. So a couple of companies went to the wall, and they were coming at it with an average price that was probably too low. There were a couple of disruptors, you would call them nowadays, but they weren't. That phraseology wasn't around back then. I suppose motor insurance, or insurance as a whole, it doesn't follow other commercial realities. So the more you sell isn't necessarily the best result. It's not like selling chocolate. If you sell loads of chocolate, you'll make more profit if you manage your costs. If you sell a load of motor insurance at €400, you need to price in how many will have claims, the value of those claims, and do you have enough capital to pay it back? So what tended to happen back 10 years ago, there was a couple of failures, as I've said, Setanta being one of the bigger ones. Probably priced too low. The claims environment got very challenging for insurance companies in Ireland. Claims were increasing. Whiplash was a big thing. The premiums that came in were suddenly passed out by the claims that were estimated, and they didn't have enough in the tin to pay out the possible liabilities, and the Irish state had to step in. It was a lengthy high court process, and we all ended up with a bit of a levy. If you know that on your motor insurance, even the bills you get, Steph, there'll be your premium includes 5% government levy plus this levy, that levy, the other levy. One of them is the Quinn levy, but all in all, they're to pay for some of the financial failures that we've had in the past. So after that, insurance premiums rocketed. Motor now, absolutely rocketed in Ireland. It became a political issue, of course. Then there had to be a number of challenges to it. They had to go in and review the injuries board and how we deal with personal injury claims. Up to that point, whiplash, you'll be familiar with that phraseology. In an accident, you can get whiplash, and medically it can be, I think, quite difficult to not define, but it tends to be he said, she said, if it gets to court as regards the medical evidence. So whiplash cases in Ireland were about 15 grand. UK was about 5, and we're a small country. People often say we're the size of Greater Manchester when it comes to numbers. You can't continue with that level of claims payout and expect low premiums or competitive premiums even. So there was a number of different things that had to come. 80% of those injuries back then were whiplash. And I suppose the insurance premiums peaked in about 2017. And then there was a number of new judicial guidelines out in the last couple of years around personal injury. So it's into the courts. And, once you get into the courts, it takes 2 to 4 years to actually get results. So we're still in the middle of that graph, that cycle of waiting to see, do those guidelines work, and how many, because you can, a solicitor can accept on behalf of his client or go to court, and we're seeing court cases the whole time. So in terms of price, it has been coming down over the last 4 or 5 years. and over the last year has risen by 2% according to the CSO figures recently, and that's the first increase in 5 years.
It's kind of in line with inflation, isn't it? So you'd
It's
expect...
kind of in line with inflation, and one has to bear that in mind as well, that, an insurance company has higher wage costs and pays electricity as well. So their costs are up, that's for sure. It's probably averaging about 600 quid odd per motor insurance at the moment.
And I suppose the other point then, in terms of the industry and the way it works, is most people will go to a broker for their insurance. So you guys, what does the process of working with you look like? Let's use somebody who, is moving to Ireland, has never lived here before.
Yeah.
You're having a chat with them. What does the process of getting insurance and specifically the timeline look like?
Yes. So there's a couple of very important things. The biggest one is the golden ticket is your no claims bonus. So we're familiar with that language in Ireland. When you're coming from Australia, Canada, abroad, America, etc., the language might be slightly different, but it's still going to be called a no claims statement. But a no claims bonus is what one needs. It's a 1-page PDF. It's not the 85 pages that you get at renewal time from your insurance company. And it basically states your name, the dates it was on cover, and the amount of years claims free. And that is your ticket to getting the most competitive price. 5 years in Ireland, claims free, would be considered normal for the maximum, though some insurers give up to 9 years. And you get up to 50, 60 or 70% off depending on the insurer. So it's quite an important document financially. Timelines, it really does depend on how efficient your own insurance company broker is in your jurisdiction. And bear in mind that the policy has to be cancelled. So if we take an example of yourself, Stephanie, if you're in America and you need to get to Ireland in 4 weeks' time, and you need the insurance in place before you jump into the car, you'll need to cancel your policy in America at X date and make sure that you get the required documents in your inbox, when you're in the air or something like that, because once you land, the policy needs to be cancelled.
What do most people do, John? I mean, that's, I'm just thinking practically.
Yeah, practically, it's crazy.
You're probably running errands in your car right up until the second.
You are using
I remember we did. You need that car. So what do people do?
It tends to be a bit of a juggling act, to be fair. You're dead right. The policy can't be live, you see, in America.
Okay.
Yeah. So it has to be a cancelled no claims bonus. Now, once you get into the nitty gritty of trying to get quotations, you see, it's all about, like everything in the world, Stephanie, it's big data. That's what it's all about these days. So getting a quotation with us, or indeed any broker, you're going to need certain things. Your license, number one, license details, and an Irish Air Code, and the car reg.
Irish Air Code?
Yes.
For a place you reside?
For the place that you propose to reside, which in many cases we've seen, it's going to be mom and dad's place maybe for a period.
Airbnb?
Yeah. Okay. So in order to get the guaranteed quote and to effect cover, they're all things that are needed now.
So, okay, so that's interesting. So Air Code, right, that is a question of fact as to whether you have one. Your no claims bonus documentation, there's logistical issues there potentially around, when do I actually take myself off cover in the foreign jurisdiction?
That's right.
Perhaps you hire a car for the first couple of weeks in Ireland so that you can drive up until the last minute. I mean, there's ways around all of this. Third point, license. Let's talk about that. So take me, for example, just because I know very little about this area, so you can refresh my memory if I'm recounting things wrong. We went to Australia and I had an Irish license before I went. I got an Australian license when I was there. Didn't have to do a driving's test. Could just exchange. And when I came back, I had to hand in my Aussie license and they passed me out a new Irish license,
yes,
which I think was on the basis of the fact I had sat my test in Ireland. You'll know more about it. But that's not necessarily going to be the case for someone coming from the US. Is that right?
That's correct. So in your case, your license date, inception, probably goes back to your first Irish license, because you'll be in the system, as it were. We have encountered a couple of ones, interestingly enough, where maybe it's not on the system, your old Irish license, but we've come across examples where the client was able to physically produce the old Irish license and the NDLS said, of course, there it is, we'll agree that. So there obviously is a line inside in their offices where the data isn't online. Yes.
There's and the fact that still existed, because do you remember before they were cards and they were like paper and it would disintegrate in your wallet over a period of time?
That's right.
They weren't made to last. And also, so just at one point that comes to mind as well on this, if somebody can you get insurance in Ireland on a foreign policy, on a foreign license?
Yes.
If like you, okay, right,
yes,
that's interesting.
So we'll take a couple of examples. The best thing to yes, you can get insurance in Ireland on a foreign license. The way that under the law, you can drive in Ireland temporarily as a temporary visitor, inverted commas, for the first year, effectively. But really, you need to exchange your license after about 185 days. I think they say that's when you're considered living permanently in the country. So you can get cover on a foreign license, absolutely. But there are a couple of conditions as regards where you come from. So, in other words, the UK now is outside of the EU system for licenses, so it's considered a third country, as it were. But there's an agreement between Ireland and Britain to exchange licenses. So, under the law, technically, if you're living in Ireland over 12 months, you're not licensed to drive with a UK license. And therefore, if you're not licensed to drive, you're not insured. But we do know of cases, because we see them, where people are still driving under their UK licenses. Maybe they're not aware.
Has that ever made its way to the courts? In other words, like, has somebody had crash?
Nothing has. I haven't seen one yet. No, nothing has happened yet. It's very grey. It's very new. You know, Brexit only probably got out of legally in the last couple of years in terms of repercussions. I don't think there's been a case yet. Whether there ever will be, I don't know. I don't know.
But realistically, what you're saying is, if you're driving in Ireland on a UK license, check and see if you have insurance coverage, because there could possibly be issues.
Well, the answer they will give you is you need to get an Irish one, technically. If you're a permanent resident of Ireland, yes. You'll have people who go back and forth.
How does that work then for somebody coming from the US? Any exchange agreements?
Yeah, so slightly different from the US now. The US system, there's many states over there. So what Ireland have decided to do is it's treated as a learner permit, any American license. So it's a little bit trickier and a little bit more time consuming. And unfortunately, post-COVID, post-pandemic, there are a number of delays in the system. So that's one, if somebody's coming from the States, that needs to be very aware of. Get your appointment in as soon as possible, because it'll take longer than you think. So the US ones, what they say is you can drive in Ireland for a temporary visit of up to 12 months. That's what we've said already, you can drive. But you must go through the licensing procedure then if you're coming from the US. That means you have to sit the driver theory test. And I think there's some time limits around that. So in other words, when you pass your driver theory, you can't just go and do the driving test the day after. There's actually a procedure involved whereby you have to go and do driving lessons. In Ireland, for a young person, we'll say, starting out at 17, they have to do 12 essential driver training lessons spread out over a number of weeks before they take their full driving test. If you're coming from the States, that number is now 6. So there is a bit of good news.
And how expensive are driving lessons these days? Maybe you don't know that. It is something that you have to factor in, isn't it? You cover that cost yourself in addition to the insurance.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I suppose you could be looking at between 40 and 60 or 70 euros, depending on what part of the country you're in, an hour.
Yeah. And in terms of the kind of quotation, is there a loading for people coming from abroad, or do they come into the market on an equal footing? So let's say if I have 5 years, no claims, Irish license, and somebody has 5-year, whatever it's called, equivalent of no claims from the US, and a US license, do we both get the same quote? Now, perhaps that's a difficult question to answer. Do they need to budget more?
No, you won't get the same quote, because what tends to happen is a lot of Irish insurers that will quote for the Irish license won't quote for the American.
Okay, the market is smaller.
That's what tends to happen. Yeah, they pick their niches. It's like what I mentioned earlier. The more you sell isn't necessarily success for an insurance company, because the claims roll in. So they tend to pick segments of the market, and that changes regularly. And we get an email every so often from a large insurance company to say, "Oh, we've extended our acceptance criteria. We're now accepting full licenses under a year, and before they might have been 3 years." And suddenly they're coming in on top.
Okay.
So it's a movable feast. It really is. But what tends to happen is your bonuses, say you have a full bonus and you're coming from America, you get treated the same here. It's a full bonus here. It's year for year.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yes, it is. It's very good at the moment. There was a time it wasn't. There was a time it was kind of half, and that would push up costs. So at the moment, touch wood, it's year for year. So you get your full driving history allowed against your Irish policy. Where we see the challenges coming, I suppose, are in advance of your renewal date after 12 months. As we know, 12 months goes way faster than we think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you need to have the Irish license then, and there are delays in the system. We know that. So
basically, once you get your insurance on your foreign license, you need to kind of have the wheels in motion. What happens if you come up to that renewal date and you haven't got an Irish license at that point?
So there's a couple of things, depending on the insurer. So there's one large Irish insurer will not give a renewal quote unless you have an Irish license.
Okay.
And they'll send us your bonus and tell us to go elsewhere. There's another insurer who will agree the cover once you've made an appointment within DLS because of delays.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting one. How long that'll go on for, I don't know. I'm still surprised there are delays within the system. You know, we're going into 25. I'm not sure why they can't resource that area better within the state and get these things done, but that's another day's work. So yeah, that definitely is a challenge. I would say get in very early on that, you know.
Yeah, be proactive.
But it's and that can be a bit of a nightmare too for certain people, because again, we'll go back to the error code. You're gonna have to maybe have a MyGov ID page. You'll have to upload your error code. There'll be a lot of data that needs to sync and be correct. So if you're living at home and you're moving somewhere else, you need all that stuff to sync together at the right time.
So we would talk about My Account, which is a subset of MyGov.
Yes.
You generally need PPS number for MyGov.
That's
Isn't that
right.
Yeah.
And
so
we get back some emails from clients saying, I don't have my license yet because we had issues with PPS and error codes, and it's not just the NDLS bit. There's quite a bit involved.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Tax Bites for Expats. Please do leave a rating or review wherever you listen to your podcast. And as always, remember to take professional tax advice specific to your personal circumstances before acting or refraining from action in connection with the matters dealt with in this series. The material in this podcast is intended to give general guidance only.